Work, if you got ambitious, was to edit the flicks, right? That was in the homework before moving up and down the list, I think. Is that right? So how can we do that? I gave you the hint that contentEditable is what you should Google. Suppose we go to our HTML and we stick the attribute contentEditable on flick name. Okay, nothing's happening just yet. I think I might need to say contentEditable equals something. It's not. I put it in as a class, didn't I? Yeah, I didn't add an attribute. I added a class. Didn't mean to do that inside quotes. There we go. contentEditable. Refresh. And now it acts like an input, just like that. Let's again inspect this thing. No, it's not an input. It's still just a span. But that contentEditable attribute makes it behave that way. So now this span is my $0. $0 dot, and you see it has a property called contentEditable, camel cased, which is currently set to true. I could set it to false, and now I can't do that anymore on this one. I can do it on the other two, but I can't do it on this one anymore. So I could set it back to true, and now I can do it again. So one way you might be tempted to try when you have an input and you make changes to the value of that input, it fires an event called change. So just like we have click and we have submit, there's an event called change on the form elements. And whenever their values change, that event fires. So if this were an input, we could watch for that to happen. And then every time it happens, we could just update our array. Unfortunately, change events do not fire on contentEditable elements, only on actual form inputs. That's a bummer, so we can't do it that way. We could still look for keyboard press events or something like that. That sounds like too much trouble. So what we could do is just add another button that makes it editable. And then when we're done with that, so basically we'll have this button. It'll say edit. We click edit, it becomes contentEditable. And then maybe the button changes to a save button. You make your changes, you click the save button, and then it becomes uneditable. And at that point, we update our array. Because we know we can set contentEditable to true or false manually. So instead of adding the attribute, we'll do it that way. So let's add a new button. In our HTML, we have our fave button. Let's add another one. We'll give it a class of success. I want it to be green, I think. A class of edit. And a class of button. And I'll make it say edit. There it is. I want something to happen when we click it, so I better add an event listener. So when we render the list item, we make our copy, we remove the template class. We start listening for clicks to the remove button. We start listening for clicks to the fave button. And now we will start listening for clicks on the edit button. So item.querySelector to find that button. It has a class of edit as well as a class of button. That's how we'll find it. We'll add an event listener. The event we're listening for is a click. And then we want to run a method that we have not yet made. Now this same button is going to make it editable and make it no longer editable. So instead of calling it like edit flick, I think I'm going to name it this dot toggle editable. So it'll turn editing on and off. And we'll again use the same trick. We'll bind this so that the instance of the class will be this inside toggleEditable. We'll also pass in the flick so we can mess with the array as needed. And then let's try writing this thing. Here we go, under fave flick. Let's add another one called toggleEditable. It will again receive the flick as an argument, and it will receive the event as the second argument. So what do we need to do? We'll probably need the item again. Needs to do a couple of things. It needs to make the flick name content editable. We said we were going to change the button too. Instead of saying edit, it should say save, so that you know that clicking it again will actually do something. So we could try that too. So first of all, let's just make content editable toggle on and off. So it's not the item, it's not the list item, right? It's this span with a class of flick name. So we will look inside item for that selector dot flick name. And once we find it, let's just set content editable to true. Don't worry about toggling it yet. Refresh the page. Right now, content is not editable. I'm clicking here. I click edit, and now it is. I click edit again, and it still is because we're not turning it back off. But edit is now setting content editable to true when we click the button. But if it's already editable, we want it to be false. So what's a simple way we could do that? How can we make this toggle instead of just setting it to true? Notice, by the way, content editable is camel cased when you get to it through a property like this. What could I do to make it toggle it on and off instead of just always setting it to true? Set it to the opposite of what it is right now. Let's see about that. So let's find one of these, inspect. So now we've got this span set to $0. $0 equals the opposite, not $0 content editable. Now it's false. Do it again. Up. Why isn't that working every time? What is content editable right now? It's false. That looks like the string false. So what is not $0 dot content editable? So notice, $0 content editable was not false, it was the string false. And strings are truthy. So the opposite of that was still false. So unfortunately, that's not going to get us what we had hoped. Weird. Very weird. Well, okay. we'll just save our flick name span to a variable. Const name field equals item.querySelector flick name. We are going to take a break soon, so if you do need to leave, you can wait about 15 minutes. We will be taking a break. So having done that, let's say if name field dot, oh, well, hey, how about this? Let's look at that again. So the value of contentEditable is a string. But notice my little search there. There's also is contentEditable. And that's false. Real false. So what if we set $0.contentEditable to the opposite of $0 is contentEditable? That turns it on and off. So we do that. However, we also want to change how the button is labeled. So we'll do it the long way. So if name field is contentEditable, then we want to make it not contentEditable anymore. So name field dot contentEditable equals false. Else name field contentEditable is true. So if it's true, make it false. If it's false, make it true. And then let's change how the button's labeled. How can we find the button? Well, just like we found the flick name by looking through here, we could do it that way. Of course, it's also the event target, isn't it? So we could do it that way. I will just, for the heck of it, const btn equals event.target. And then I'll use btn here. Because now I want to do more than one thing with this button. So we save the event target to a variable called button. Then we find the button's closest ancestor named flick. Then down here, if it is contentEditable and we're making it no longer contentEditable, I could take the button and change its text to say edit, because it's going from editable to not editable anymore. And if it's going from if it's going from not editable to editable, I want to change the button text to say save. Does that work? Let's try it out. Here we go. I have my edit button. It is not currently editable. I click it. The text changes to save, and it's editable. I click save, and it goes back to edit, and it is no longer editable. Huh. Snazzy. Maybe that's too subtle a change. What if I only wanted that success class on there if it's a save button? And the rest of the time I just want it to be the default, whatever that is. So under index, I could take success off of here. And now I think it'll be blue. Yeah, it's blue. So what I could do is if I go from not editable to editable, so that's the else here, I could also say button dot class list dot add success, and then just make sure I remove it when I make it no longer editable. Button dot class list dot remove success. See what I'm doing? Adding the success class when it becomes editable, removing it when it's no longer editable. So then it should change colors. We've used these tricks before. We've done class list remove before. We've changed text content before. We're just combining our skills in some new, interesting ways. Edit. Now it's green. Save. Not green anymore. Look at that. Isn't that nice? That's very nice. Of course, it still doesn't do anything. We're still not changing the flick, right? So, to make it clear which one's the if and which one's the else, I'm going to actually add a comment here. So if I hit this block, then it's already editable, and I'm going to not editable. So this is make it no longer editable. And this is make it editable. So if I'm going from editable to not editable, that's when I want to update the flick object in the array, right? So this makes it no longer editable, and then I also want to save the changes. Now I have the flick. So it's flick.name I need to change. What do I want to set it to? Is there a value? I don't know. Let's comment this out real quick. Or heck, we probably don't even need to refresh the page. Let's just check this out. Here we go. Now our flick name is set to $0. What about $0.0.value? Is that a thing? It's not. What if we make it editable and then do $0 value? Not a thing. So with content editable, there is no value. It's not actually an input. It's just behaving like one. What it does have is text content. So you're actually changing the text content when it's editable. So in our flick object, we want to change the name to namefield dot text content. So again, when we go from editable to not editable, we make sure it's no longer editable. We change the text of the button. We take the success class off the button, and then we take whatever was typed in there, and we set the name equal to that. Yeah.
Should we set the focus to the new...
When you make it editable, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Refresh. Let's try this out. I click edit. Okay, I'm editing now. Gosh dang it, no I'm not. I still have to click that thing like some kind of animal. And look, there's no clue even. Until I click there, I can't even see that it's clickable, can I? Yeah, this is not good usability-wise. So when we make it editable, we set content editable to true. And now we can't do value. We can't do, what was the other thing we couldn't do? We couldn't watch for a change event. But if there's any justice in this world, we can focus it. Okay, turns out there is at least a teeny tiny bit of justice in this world. So yeah, that works. Cool. Good suggestion. So we make it editable, and we also put a cursor in there. Yeah.
How do you get the cursor to be at the end of it?
At the end instead of the beginning. Or a lot of times what you'll see is it'll just highlight what's there, so if you start typing, it'll overdo the whole thing. Let's see about JavaScript. Change the cursor at end of input. Stack Overflow is, of course, the first result. Let's see what CSS Tricks has to say. Does that say anything good? EL selection start. EL create text range. These are the properties that we will need to mess with. EL selection end. Let's see. Let's turn this off. Let's make sure we have this inspected. $0 is the thing. Let's do this. Let's see. $0 dot. Oh, look. We're not actually in an input, are we? We're in a content editable. Can we even do that? Selection. Start. It doesn't look like we can. Where's the fun in that? If I make an input just out of scratch, just out of nowhere, I equals document.create element. Well, I have one up here. So if I have that, $0 selection start a thing. Yeah, now it is. So it looks like it's not super simple to do if you have content editable. We can try searching for that real quick. It looks like somewhere we have content editable true actually in this article. Let's see if where it mentions that. Probably in a. That's what I figured. Yeah, a comment. Let's see what they say here. All based on using inputs and not content editable. If the content editable div doesn't contain other multi-lined elements, this solution works. Okay. Neat. We're not going to do that right now. But you could. Oh, you can create text ranges and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, if you really want to do it, there you go. Just search for JavaScript, move cursor to the end of content editable. Usability-wise, I agree. That's what it should do. Now, I haven't actually checked whether this works. So let's change this to Magic Mike. Save. Let's look at our array, app.flicks. There we go. It did. We saved the flicks object, or we changed the flicks object right here. And because objects are passed around by reference, that changes it in the array. This is not a new copy of the same object. This is the original object. So changing it here changes it there. Yeah.
On a website, if I put in something, sometimes when I type in, when I put in Command Z, it goes back to the previous input. Is that just a computer thing, or is that a JavaScript thing?
That they're probably doing that with JavaScript. If you want to add keyboard shortcuts, you can actually look for key presses. Well, it could be actually. It could be the browser doing that. Yeah, if you're doing it in like a text area. But if you go ahead and hit save, of course, it's too late for your browser to do that for you. So you could implement an undo feature. Just save the previous version somewhere and change it back. So this does the thing. All right. Edit existing flicks. Beautiful.